Every night, young Malik hears his older sister, Tiana, crying softly in her room. Something isn't right, and Malik can sense it. Tiana's smile has faded, and a shadow looms over her ever since their mother's boyfriend, Greg, came into their lives. But when their mom refuses to believe Tiana's cries for help, Malik decides he'll be the one to protect her, no matter the cost. What Greg doesn't realize is that Malik's courage runs deeper than anyone imagined. Before we dive into this heart-wrenching tale of loyalty and bravery, tell us in the comments from where you are watching from today, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of strength and resilience. The sound of laughter echoed through the modest two-story house as Malik chased his sister Tiana up the stairs, their footsteps thundering against the wooden steps. "You can't catch me, little brother," Tiana called over her shoulder, her braids swinging as she took the steps two at a time. "Watch me." Malik grinned, his small legs pumping faster. At 10 years old, he was quick for his age, but his 13-year-old sister still had the advantage of longer legs. Their mother Keisha's voice floated up from the kitchen below. "Y'all better not be running in this house. Someone's gonna fall and break something." "Sorry, Mom," they called in unison, slowing to a walk but still giggling as they reached the top of the stairs. Tiana wrapped an arm around Malik's shoulders as they caught their breath. "Race you again after dinner?" "You're on," Malik agreed, bumping his shoulder against hers. This was their routine, racing, laughing, sharing secrets. As the only children in the house, they'd grown especially close since their parents divorced 2 years ago. Their dad still lived across town, and they saw him on weekends, but during the week, it was just them and their mom. At least it had been, until Greg came along. The doorbell rang, and Malik felt Tiana's arm tighten slightly around his shoulders before she quickly pulled away. "That must be Greg," their mother called up excitedly. "Come down and say hello, kids." Malik watched as Tiana's bright smile faded slightly. She squared her shoulders and headed downstairs, with Malik following close behind. Greg stood in the entryway, a bouquet of flowers in one hand and a shopping bag in the other. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in crisp business casual clothes that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. At 35, he was a few years younger than their mom, and Malik had to admit he could see why she liked him. Greg had an easy smile and a way of making people feel special when he talked to them. "There's my beautiful girl," Greg said, kissing Keisha on the cheek before turning to the children. "And here are my favorite kids. I brought something for you both." Malik noticed how Tiana seemed to shrink into herself as Greg's attention turned their way. It was subtle, anyone else might have missed it, but Malik had always been observant, especially when it came to his sister. Greg reached in his shopping bag and pulled out 2 boxes of candy. "Dark chocolate for the princess," he said, holding one out to Tiana with a smile that lingered a bit too long, "and sour gummies for the man of the house." "What do you say?" Keisha prompted. "Thank you," they mumbled in unison. "Greg's joining us for dinner," Keisha announced, taking the flowers to find a vase. "I made his favorite, my special lasagna. Need any help in the kitchen, beautiful?" Greg called after her. "I've got it handled. Why don't you hang out with the kids while I finish up?" Malik saw something flash across Greg's face. Was it annoyance? Before his smile returned. "Of course, honey." He settled onto the couch and patted the spaces beside him. "Come on, kids. Tell me about your day." Malik sat on the far end of the couch, but Tiana remained standing. "I actually have some homework to finish before dinner," she said quietly. "But it's Friday," Greg pointed out, his tone friendly, but with an edge that made Malik's stomach tighten. "Surely it can wait until tomorrow?" "I'd rather get it done now," Tiana insisted, already backing toward the stairs. "Thanks for the candy." As she disappeared upstairs, Greg's eyes followed her with an intensity that made Malik uncomfortable. Then he turned to Malik with that easy smile again. "Guess it's just us men, huh? Want to watch some basketball highlights?" Malik nodded, though his mind was on his sister. This wasn't the first time she'd made an excuse to avoid being around Greg. Lately, she seemed to be finding reasons to stay in her room whenever he came over, which was becoming more and more frequent since he'd started dating their mom 3 months ago. During dinner, Malik watched as Greg charmed their mother with stories about his day at the investment firm where he worked. Keisha laughed at all his jokes, touching his arm and looking at him with stars in her eyes. Meanwhile, Tiana pushed her food around her plate, speaking only when directly addressed. The lasagna is amazing as always, Keisha, Greg said, reaching for seconds. You're gonna make me fat if you keep cooking like this. Oh, stop, Keisha giggled. You look perfect just the way you are. Speaking of perfect, Greg said, setting down his fork. I've been thinking. We've been dating for a few months now, and things are going so well. He reached for Keisha's hand. What would you think about me moving in? Malik's fork clattered against his plate. Across the table, Tiana had gone completely still. Oh. Keisha's free hand flew to her chest. Wow. That's a big step, Greg. I know it is, he said, his thumb stroking her knuckles. But I love spending time with you and the kids. And my lease is up next month. It feels like perfect timing. What do you think? Keisha glanced at her children. Kids? How would you feel about Greg moving in with us? Malik looked at Tiana, but she was staring down at her plate, her hands clenched in her lap. I think, Keisha continued when neither child responded, I think we should sleep on it. Talk about it as a family. Of course, Greg said smoothly, though Malik caught another flash of that something in his eyes. Take all the time you need. I just want us to be together more. After dinner, Tiana disappeared upstairs again while Malik helped their mom clean up. Through the kitchen window, he could see Greg on his phone in the backyard, pacing as he talked in low, angry tones that didn't match his usual cheerful demeanor. Mom? Malik asked as he dried a plate. Do you really want Greg to move in? Keisha sighed dreamily. He makes me happy, baby. Don't you want Mommy to be happy? Yeah, but... Malik hesitated. Tiana seems different lately, like she doesn't want him around. Your sister's just at that age, Keisha said, dismissing his concern. Teenagers get moody sometimes. She'll adjust. But Malik wasn't so sure. That night, as he lay in bed trying to sleep, he heard it again, the muffled sound of crying coming through the wall that separated his room from Tiana's. It had been happening more and more lately, always late at night when she thought everyone else was asleep. He got up and padded to her door, knocking softly. T? You okay? The crying stopped abruptly. I'm fine, came her voice, thick with tears. Go back to bed, Malik. Can I come in? I said I'm fine. Her voice cracked on the last word. Malik pressed his forehead against the door. Remember when Dad first moved out? And I used to have nightmares? You let me sleep in your room and tell me stories until I felt better. There was a long pause, then the sound of footsteps. The door opened, revealing Tiana's tear-stained face in the darkness. Come here, little brother, she whispered, pulling him into a hug. They sat on her bed, backs against the wall, shoulders touching like they used to do when sharing secrets. But tonight, Tiana didn't seem ready to share. Is it about Greg? Malik asked finally. Tiana tensed beside him. What about Greg? I don't know. You just seem scared of him sometimes. I'm not scared, she said too quickly. He's Mom's boyfriend. That's all. But Dash, can we just sit here? Tiana interrupted. Please? I don't want to talk. I don't want to be alone. Malik nodded, his worry growing. They sat in silence until Tiana's breathing evened out and she fell asleep. As he carefully extracted himself and headed back to his own room, Malik made a decision. Something wasn't right with Greg, and if no one else was going to figure out what it was, he would have to do it himself. The next morning, Malik woke early and crept downstairs. He found Greg already there, making coffee in the kitchen like he belonged there, like he was already living with them. Morning, champ, Greg said with that perfect smile. You're up early. Couldn't sleep, Malik said, watching as Greg moved around their kitchen with disturbing familiarity. Know what helps me sleep? Greg leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Minding my own business. Not asking questions about things that don't concern me. You get what I'm saying? The threat was clear in his tone, though his smile never wavered. Malik felt a chill run down his spine, but he met Greg's gaze steadily. I get what you're saying, he replied quietly. But Tiana is my sister. Everything about her concerns me. Greg's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. You're a good brother, Malik. Just be careful. Sometimes trying to protect people can end up hurting them instead. Before Malik could respond, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Tiana appeared in the doorway, freezing when she saw Greg. Her eyes darted to Malik, then quickly away. Morning, princess, Greg said, his voice honey-sweet again. Want some breakfast? I make great pancakes. I'm not hungry, Tiana mumbled, backing away. I'm going to get ready for dance class. As she hurried back upstairs, Malik saw Greg watching her go with that same intense look. When he turned back to Malik, his eyes were cold despite his smile. Remember what I said, champ? Some things are better left alone. But Malik knew he couldn't leave it alone. Not when his sister cried every night. Not when she flinched at Greg's touch and made excuses to avoid him. Not when that mask of charm slipped occasionally to reveal something darker underneath. He didn't know exactly what was wrong yet, but he knew he had to figure it out. He had to protect Tiana, even if he didn't fully understand what he was protecting her from. That afternoon, as Malik sat on his bed doing homework, he heard voices in the hallway, Greg and Tiana. He crept to his door and listened. Your mom tells me you've been distant lately, Greg was saying. I hope it's not because of me. I have to get ready for dance class, Tiana replied, her voice small. We're going to be family soon, Greg continued as if she hadn't spoken. I just want us to be close. You understand that, don't you, princess? The silence that followed made Malik's skin crawl. Please let me pass, Tiana whispered finally. Of course, sweetheart. We'll talk more later. Malik waited until Greg's footsteps faded away before opening his door. Tiana stood frozen in the hallway, her dance bag clutched to her chest like a shield. T, he said softly. She startled, then tried to smile. Hey, little brother. I'm running late for dance. I can walk you, he offered. It's only a few blocks. No, she said quickly, then softer. No, it's okay. I'll be fine. As she hurried down the stairs, Malik made another decision. He might only be 10, but he wasn't going to let his sister face whatever this was alone. He would watch and listen and figure out how to help her. He didn't know it yet, but that decision would soon test his courage in ways he never imagined. For now, he simply stood at his window, watching his sister practically run down the sidewalk, while downstairs, he could hear Greg's laugh mixing with their mother's, filling their once peaceful home with an undercurrent of tension that grew stronger every day. Tiana sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at her reflection in the vanity mirror across the room. The evening sun cast long shadows through her window, and she could hear the sounds of her mother and Greg laughing downstairs. The sound made her stomach twist. Her best friend Sarah's words from dance class earlier that day echoed in her mind. If something's wrong, you have to tell someone, T. Your mom will understand. But would she? Tiana pulled her knees to her chest, remembering how her mother's eyes lit up whenever Greg entered the room. How she'd been humming to herself more lately, wearing brighter colors, smiling more. He makes me happy, she told Tiana and Malik just yesterday. Don't you want mommy to be happy? Tiana did want her mother to be happy. After the divorce, she'd watched Keisha cry herself to sleep too many nights, throw herself into work, try to hold everything together for her children. Now with Greg, she seemed lighter, more like her old self. But Greg? Tiana shuddered, remembering how he'd cornered her in the kitchen that morning while her mother was in the shower. How he'd reached out to fix her hair ribbon, his fingers lingering too long. The way he called her princess in that soft voice that made her skin crawl. The accidental touches that weren't accidents at all. A knock at her door made her jump. T. It was Malik. Mom says dinner's ready. I'll be down in a minute, she called back, her voice shakier than she intended. Are you okay? Malik's concern was clear, even through the door. Yeah, just finishing some homework. There was a pause. You know I'm here if you need me, right? Tiana's throat tightened. Her little brother shouldn't have to worry about her like this. He was only 10. He should be playing video games and reading comics, not trying to protect his big sister. I know, she whispered, but Malik had already gone. During dinner, Tiana pushed her food around her plate, barely listening to Greg's story about his day at work. She could feel his eyes on her occasionally, that possessive gaze that made her want to disappear into her chair. Princess, he said suddenly, making her flinch. You've barely touched your food. Aren't you hungry? Leave her be, Keisha said, but she was smiling. She's probably just thinking about that boy from dance class. What's his name? Marcus. Mom. Tiana felt her face flush. It's not like that. Oh. Greg's voice had an edge to it now. There's a boy. He's just my dance partner, Tiana mumbled, staring at her plate. 13 is awfully young to be thinking about boys, Greg said, his tone disapproving. Maybe we should consider switching you to an all-girls class. But Marcus has been my partner all year. Tiana protested. We have a recital coming up. Greg's right. Keisha cut in. You are getting to that age where we need to be more careful. And Greg's just looking out for you, baby. Across the table, Malik was watching the exchange with narrowed eyes. Tiana caught his gaze and quickly looked away, feeling tears threatening. After dinner, as Greg helped Keisha with the dishes, Tiana stood in the hallway, listening to them laugh and talk. Her mother sounded so happy, but the words were burning in Tiana's throat, demanding to be said. Sarah was right. She had to tell someone, and it had to be her mom. Mom, she said softly, stepping into the kitchen. Can I talk to you? Alone? Keisha turned, surprised. Of course, baby. Greg, would you mind giving us a minute? No problem at all, Greg said smoothly. As he passed Tiana, he squeezed her shoulder. Good night, princess. Tiana waited until his footsteps faded upstairs before speaking. Mom, I need to tell you something important. What is it, honey? Keisha dried her hands on a dish towel, giving Tiana her full attention. Tiana's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. It's about Greg. Oh. Something in Keisha's expression shifted subtly. What about him? He makes me uncomfortable. The words came out in a rush. The way he looks at me sometimes and touches me. Touches you. Keisha's voice sharpened. What do you mean, touches you? Not like that. Tiana stumbled over the words. But he's always finding reasons to touch my hair or my shoulders, and he corners me when you're not around, and the way he looks at me. She wrapped her arms around herself. It scares me, Mom. There was a long silence. Then Keisha sighed heavily. Tiana, honey, I think you're misinterpreting things. Greg is just trying to be a father figure to you. No, Mom, you don't understand, I understand that this is a big adjustment. Keisha's voice was gentle but firm. Greg is the first man I've dated seriously since your father, and I know change can be scary. But he cares about us, about you and Malik. He's trying to build a relationship with you both. Mom, please. Tiana could feel the tears starting. Are you jealous, baby? Keisha asked suddenly. Is that what this is about? Because you know no one could ever replace you in my heart. This isn't about jealousy. Tiana's voice rose. He's not who you think he is. When you're not around, he's different. That's enough. Keisha's sharp tone made Tiana step back. I will not have you making up stories about Greg just because you're having trouble adjusting. He is a good man who makes me happy, and I need you to accept that. But no buts. Go to your room and think about what you're saying. Making accusations like that is serious, Tiana. You could really hurt someone. Tiana stood frozen, staring at her mother. The betrayal cut so deep she could barely breathe. Without another word, she turned and fled upstairs, tears blinding her. What she didn't know was that Malik had been sitting at the top of the stairs, listening to every word. His small hands were clenched into fists, and he felt something he'd never felt toward his mother before, anger. He waited until their mother had gone to her room before creeping to Tiana's door. He could hear her crying inside, not the quiet sobs of nighttime, but deep, broken sobs that made his chest hurt. T, he whispered, pushing the door open. Can I come in? Tiana was curled up on her bed, her whole body shaking. When she looked up, her face was streaked with tears. You heard? Malik nodded, closing the door behind him. He climbed onto the bed beside her, wrapping his small arms around her like she used to do for him after his nightmares. I believe you, he said firmly. Tiana broke down again, clinging to her little brother. She didn't believe me, Malik. Our own mother didn't believe me. I know. Malik stroked her hair awkwardly, trying to be comforting. But I do. And I'm going to help you. How? Tiana pulled back, wiping her eyes. No one will listen to us. We're just kids. Then we'll make them listen. Malik's young face was set with determination. We'll get proof. I'll follow him around with my phone and record him being creepy. Or we could set up cameras. Despite everything, Tiana gave a watery laugh. You've been watching too many spy movies? Maybe, Malik admitted. But I'm serious, T. We can't let him keep scaring you like this. And if Mom won't help. He trailed off, then held out his pinky. We'll help each other. Deal? Tiana looked at her little brother's offered pinky, feeling a surge of love and gratitude so strong it almost overwhelmed her. She linked her pinky with his. Deal. They sat in silence for a while, shoulders touching, until Tiana spoke again. What are we going to do? First, Malik said, his young face serious. We need to be smart about this. We can't let Greg know we're watching him. And we need to document everything. Document? Yeah, like in those crime shows Mom watches. Write down dates and times when he does weird stuff. Maybe we can use my old iPod to record things dashed. Malik, Tiana interrupted. You don't have to do this. It could be dangerous if he finds out dashed. You're my sister, Malik said simply. And he's the dangerous one, not me. Besides, he managed a small smile. I'm too smart for him to catch me. Tiana pulled him into another hug, fresh tears falling. But these were different. These tears came with the first feeling of hope she'd had in weeks. Later that night, after Malik had gone back to his room, Tiana lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet except for the distant sound of her mother's television. Somewhere in that quiet house was Greg, probably planning his next move, thinking he had won because her mother hadn't believed her. But he didn't know about Malik. He didn't know that her little brother was smarter and braver than anyone gave him credit for. For the first time in weeks, Tiana felt something besides fear. She felt a spark of defiance. In his room, Malik sat at his desk with a fresh notebook open in front of him. At the top of the first page, he wrote in his neat schoolboy handwriting, "Evidence against Greg." Under that, he started his first entry. Date, April 15th. Time, 7:45 p.m. Greg tried to make T quit dance class because of her partner Marcus. He didn't know exactly how they were going to stop Greg yet, but he knew they would, together, because that's what siblings did. They protected each other, even when the adults in their lives failed them. As Malik wrote, he could hear movement in the hallway, Greg's heavy footsteps passing by, pausing briefly near Tiana's door before moving on. Malik's grip tightened on his pencil, but he kept writing. They would need every detail, every incident, every pattern. Greg might think he had all the power, but he didn't know what he was up against. He didn't know about the silent pact made between a brother and sister, sealed with linked pinkies and unshakable love. He didn't know that his time was running out, one careful notebook entry at a time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new reasons to be brave. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of their rooms, two siblings found strength in knowing they weren't alone anymore. Sometimes the biggest courage comes in the smallest packages, and sometimes the strongest heroes are the ones who haven't even finished growing up yet. Malik closed his notebook and hid it carefully in his sock drawer. Then he went to bed, his young mind already planning his next moves. In the room next door, Tiana finally drifted off to sleep, and for the first time in weeks, her dreams weren't filled with fear. Instead, she dreamed of a small but mighty guardian angel who looked suspiciously like her little brother, watching over her with fierce determination in his eyes. Malik sat at his desk, carefully writing in his blue spiral notebook. His teacher had taught them about being specific in their observations, and he was putting those lessons to good use now. April 18th, 3:45 p.m., Greg accidentally brushed against T in the kitchen. She dropped her glass of water. Mom didn't notice. April 19th, 7:30 p.m., Greg insisted on driving T to dance class even though it's only 3 blocks away. She made excuse about stomach ache to not go. April 20th, 6:15 p.m., Greg stood in T.I.'s doorway for 10 minutes while she did homework. Said he was checking on her. She kept looking scared. He'd filled nearly 10 pages already. Each entry made his stomach twist, but he forced himself to write everything down. His 5th grade teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, always said that details matter. The truth is in the details, she'd tell the class during writing assignments. Malik hoped she was right. From his desk, he had a clear view of the hallway through his partially open door. Greg had moved in last week, and now Malik spent every moment he could watching, listening, gathering evidence. He'd even started taking his homework to the kitchen table instead of his room, just to keep an eye on things. A movement caught his attention, Greg walking past Tiana's room again, slowing down as he passed her door. Malik quickly added it to his notebook. April 20th, 8:45 p.m. 3rd time Greg walked by T.I.'s room in 1 hour. What are you always writing in that notebook? Malik jumped at his mother's voice. He hadn't heard her come up behind him. Just school stuff, he said, carefully closing the notebook. A project. Keisha smiled, ruffling his hair. My studious little man. But it's getting late. Time for bed, okay? Okay, Mom. He waited until she left before hiding the notebook in his sock drawer, beneath his winter clothes. Later that night, as Malik lay in bed, he heard Greg's voice in the hallway, speaking softly but with an edge that made him sit up straight. Princess, we need to talk about these stories you've been telling. I haven't told any stories. Tiana's voice trembled. No? Then why did your mother ask me about making you uncomfortable? We wouldn't want her getting the wrong idea, would we? It might really upset her. Malik slipped out of bed and crept to his door, straining to hear. I didn't say anything, Tiana whispered. Good. Let's keep it that way. Our little secret, right, Princess? We wouldn't want anything to happen to your dance classes, or to upset your mother's happiness. Malik heard Tiana's door close, then Greg's heavy footsteps moving away. He waited a few minutes before sneaking to Tiana's room. She was sitting on her bed, hugging her knees to her chest. When she saw Malik, she tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. I heard him, Malik said, sitting beside her. I'm writing everything down, T. Every single thing. What good will that do? Tiana's voice was hollow. Mom doesn't want to see it. Nobody wants to see it. Someone will, Malik insisted. We just have to find the right person to tell. He'd been researching on his school computer during lunch breaks, looking up what to do when adults wouldn't listen. He'd memorized the local police number, not just 911. He'd found websites about something called Child Protective Services. He wasn't sure exactly how it all worked, but he was learning. We need a signal, he said suddenly, for when you're scared and can't call out. Tiana looked at him questioningly. Like this. Malik went to the wall their room shared and knocked softly. 3 quick taps, 2 slow ones. If you're ever scared, do this. I'll hear it and come help. Tiana's eyes filled with tears. Malik, you can't always protect me. What if dash? 3 quick, 2 slow, he interrupted. Practice it. Wiping her eyes, Tiana went to the wall and copied his pattern. Tap, 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 tap. Good, Malik nodded. I'll always come, T. I promise. The next day, Malik watched as his mother and Greg prepared for a dinner party with Greg's work colleagues. Keisha was nervous, wanting everything to be perfect. Tiana, honey, wear that pretty blue dress I bought you, she called upstairs. The one that matches your eyes. Malik saw Greg's face change at those words, saw something hungry flash across it before his usual smile returned. Quickly, he pulled out his notebook, which he'd started carrying in his back pocket. April 21st, 6:20 p.m. Greg's face got weird when Mom mentioned T.I.'s blue dress. Looked scary. The dinner party was awful. Greg's colleagues were loud and laughed too much at his jokes. Tiana sat stiffly in her blue dress, barely touching her food. Every time Greg introduced her as my beautiful stepdaughter-to-be, she seemed to shrink a little more. Malik watched it all, adding notes when he could. 7:45 p.m. Greg kept putting his hand on T.I.'s shoulder while showing his friends' family photos. T looked like she was going to be sick. 8:30 p.m. Greg's friend Mike said T looks all grown up. Greg said she's blooming into quite the young lady. T ran to bathroom to throw up. After the guests left, Keisha fussed over Tiana. Maybe you're coming down with something, baby. You barely ate. I'm just tired, Tiana mumbled. Can I go to bed? Of course, princess, Greg said, and Malik saw his sister flinch at the word. Later that night, Malik heard it. Tap, 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 tap. He was out of bed instantly, running to Tiana's room. She was pressed against the headboard, shaking. He was in here, she whispered, just standing in the doorway, watching me. When I woke up and saw him, she broke off, shuddering. Malik felt rage building in his chest. He'd added so many pages to his notebook, watched his sister grow more afraid each day, and still their mother saw nothing wrong. The next morning, while everyone else was still asleep, Malik sat at his computer and typed into Google, what to do if someone is hurting your sister and mom won't listen. The results made his heart race. Words like abuse and grooming popped up. He read about emergency hotlines, about trusted teachers and counselors who were required to help. He memorized numbers and websites, wrote down words he didn't fully understand but knew were important. At breakfast, he watched his mother laugh at Greg's jokes, saw her kiss him goodbye as he left for work. How could she not see? How could she let this happen to her own daughter? Mom, he tried one more time. Have you noticed he doesn't laugh anymore? What? Keisha looked up from her coffee. Don't be silly. She laughed just yesterday at dinner. No, she didn't, Malik said quietly. She hasn't laughed for real since Greg moved in. Malik, his mother's voice hardened. We've talked about this. I know change is hard, but Greg is part of our family now. The sooner you both accept that, the happier we'll all be. Malik stared at his mother, really looked at her. She had new highlights in her hair, wore brighter lipstick these days. She smiled more, but only at Greg. When she looked at her children now, her eyes seemed to slide past them, like she couldn't bear to see anything that might spoil her happiness. That night, Malik made a decision. He couldn't wait any longer, couldn't keep hoping his mother would suddenly see the truth. He had to do something himself. In his notebook, he wrote one final entry. April 22nd, 11:30 p.m. Mom won't help us. Greg keeps getting worse. T is so scared. Tomorrow I'm going to stop him myself. I don't know how yet, but I have to try. If something happens to me, whoever finds this notebook, please help my sister. He tucked the notebook away and lay in bed, thinking hard. He was only 10 years old, but he was all Tiana had. Tomorrow something would have to change. Tomorrow, he would find a way to make someone listen. Through the wall, he heard his sister crying softly, and his resolve strengthened. Greg thought he was untouchable because they were just kids. But Greg didn't understand what it meant to have a brother who loved you. He didn't understand that sometimes the biggest courage comes in the smallest packages. Malik closed his eyes, but he didn't sleep. Instead, he planned and waited and listened to his sister's tears, knowing that soon, one way or another, he would make them stop. The house felt different when their mother wasn't home. Shadows seemed longer, silence heavier. Malik sat at his desk, pretending to do homework while actually watching the hallway through his partially open door. Their mother Keisha had picked up an extra shift at the hospital, leaving Greg in charge for the evening. I'll be home around midnight, she'd said, kissing Greg goodbye. Make sure the kids get to bed on time. The way Greg had smiled made Malik's stomach turn. Now, 3 hours later, that same unease had grown into a constant knot in his chest. He heard Tiana's door open and close. She was probably getting ready for bed. Then came Greg's heavy footsteps climbing the stairs, slow and deliberate. Malik's pencil went still as he listened. Princess. Greg's voice, sickly sweet. Can I come in for a minute? I'm getting ready for bed. Tiana's voice wavered. Just want to talk. Open the door. A pause, then the soft click of Tiana's door opening. What do you want? Tiana's voice was small. That's not very friendly, is it? Greg's tone had changed, carrying that edge Malik had come to recognize. After everything I do for this family, everything I do for you, please leave me alone. Alone? But Princess, we're finally alone. No one to interrupt us. Malik heard Tiana gasp, followed by the sound of footsteps backing up. Don't come closer. Don't make a scene. You wouldn't want to upset your mother, would you? After all, she's so happy now. Stop, please. The fear in Tiana's voice galvanized Malik into action. He slipped out of his chair, heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe. Through the gap in Tiana's door, he could see Greg advancing on his sister, who was pressed against her bedroom wall. Tap, 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 tap. The secret knock, desperate and frantic against the wall. Malik's hands shook as he reached for his phone. But then he remembered. His mother had taken it to be repaired that morning. But the house phone, it was downstairs. Such a pretty girl, Greg was saying, his voice making Malik's skin crawl. Growing up so fast. Don't touch me. Malik had never heard his sister sound so terrified. Moving as quietly as he could, he crept downstairs to where the house phone sat in its cradle. With trembling fingers, he dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? My sister, Malik whispered, trying to keep his voice steady like he'd practiced in his head so many times. My mom's boyfriend is in her room. He's trying to hurt her. Please come quick. I need your address, sweetie. The dispatcher's voice was calm, but urgent. Malik gave their address, adding, "Please hurry. I can hear her crying. Are you safe? Are you somewhere away from the boyfriend?" "I'm downstairs. He's upstairs with my sister. She's 13. I'm 10. Our mom's at work." "What's your name?" "Malik. Please, you have to help her. He's been doing things, touching her hair, cornering her when mom's not around. I wrote it all down. I have proof." "You're doing great, Malik. Officers are on their way. Stay on the phone with me, okay? Tell me what you're hearing now." Malik crept back up the stairs, phone pressed to his ear. Tiana's voice drifted down the hallway. "No, please don't." "I can hear her begging him to stop," Malik whispered into the phone. "She's crying. The police are almost there, Malik. You're being so brave. Is there another adult you can call?" "Our mom, but she doesn't believe us. She thinks Greg is perfect." Malik's voice broke. "She doesn't see what he really is." Suddenly, red and blue lights flashed through the windows, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The sound of car doors slamming made Malik's knees weak with relief. "The police are here," he told the dispatcher. "Go let them in, Malik. You've done everything right." Malik ran to the front door just as the officers reached the porch. Two of them, a tall man with kind eyes and a shorter woman with her hair in a tight bun. "Where are they?" the female officer asked quietly. "Upstairs, second door on the right," Malik pointed. "Please help my sister." The officers moved swiftly but quietly up the stairs, hands on their weapons. Malik followed a few steps behind, his heart in his throat. The male officer kicked open Tiana's door. "Police!" "Step away from the girl." Greg spun around, his face transforming from predatory to shocked in an instant. He had Tiana cornered by her desk, one hand gripping her arm. "This isn't what it looks like," Greg started, releasing Tiana. "I was just dashed." "Hands where we can see them," the female officer ordered. "Step away from the girl. Now." Tiana broke free, running straight to Malik. He wrapped his arms around her as she sobbed into his shoulder. "There's been a misunderstanding." Greg tried to smile, but it looked wrong on his pale face. "I'm dating their mother. I live here. I was just checking on Dash." "Save it." The male officer cut him off, moving to handcuff him. "We'll discuss this down at the station." The female officer knelt in front of Malik and Tiana. "Are you both okay? Did he hurt you?" Tiana could only sob, but Malik spoke up. "I have proof. In my notebook. He's been doing things for weeks." "It's okay," the officer said gently. "We're going to need to talk to both of you. But you're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore." As they led Greg downstairs in handcuffs, he kept protesting. "This is ridiculous. Call Keisha. She'll tell you." "I would never." The sound of tires screeching interrupted him. Moments later, Keisha burst through the front door, still in her nurse's scrubs. "What's going on?" "The hospital said the police called." She froze at the sight of Greg in handcuffs. "What is this?" "Ma'am," the female officer stepped forward. "We received a 911 call about your boyfriend attempting to assault your daughter." "What?" "No, there must be some mistake. Greg would never." Keisha looked wildly around until she spotted her children on the stairs. "Tiana? What happened?" Tiana just pressed closer to Malik, trembling. "Mom," Malik said, his voice stronger than he felt. "I can show you." He ran to his room and retrieved his notebook, handing it to his mother with shaking hands. "I wrote down everything. Every time he touched her, every time he scared her. It's all there." Keisha opened the notebook, her face growing paler with each page she turned. This can't be true. "Greg?" But Greg's mask had slipped entirely now. "You stupid little brat," he snarled at Malik. "You had to ruin everything." "That's enough." The male officer tightened his grip on Greg's arms. "Let's go." As they led Greg out to the waiting police car, Keisha sank to her knees, the notebook falling from her hands. "My babies," she whispered, reaching for them. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But Tiana flinched away from her touch, clinging tighter to Malik. He held his sister, feeling her tears soaking his shirt, and looked at their mother with eyes that had aged years and weeks. "You didn't believe her," he said quietly. "She told you she was scared, and you didn't believe her." Keisha's face crumpled. "I know. Oh God, I know." The female officer stepped forward again. "We'll need statements from both children. And ma'am, we'll need to talk to you as well." Would you like us to call someone to be with the kids while we do this? Our dad, Malik said immediately. Please call our dad. The next hour passed in a blur of questions and tears. Their father arrived, wrapping them both in his strong arms, his face dark with anger when he learned what had happened. More officers came, taking pictures of Tiana's room, collecting Malik's notebook as evidence. Through it all, Malik didn't let go of his sister's hand. They'd made it through the worst night of their lives together, just like they'd gotten through everything else. Their mother sat in a corner, crying quietly, but neither child went to comfort her. Some betrayals, Malik realized, would take more than apologies to heal. But at least they were safe now. At least someone had finally listened. As the police finished their initial investigation, the kind-eyed male officer knelt beside Malik. You're a very brave young man, he said softly. You protected your sister when the adults in her life failed her. Not many kids would have had that courage. Malik looked up at the officer, then at Tiana, who had finally stopped crying. She's my sister, he said simply. That's what brothers do. The officer smiled and squeezed his shoulder. The world needs more brothers like you, Malik. Later, as they waited for the police to finish their work, Malik and Tiana sat together on the front porch steps, wrapped in blankets their father had brought. The night was quiet now, the police lights casting intermittent blue and red glows across their faces. You saved me, Tiana whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder. We saved each other, Malik replied, holding her hand tight. And no one's ever going to hurt you again. I promise. They sat together, watching the night sky, two siblings who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. The road ahead would be hard, full of questions and healing and change. But they would face it together, just as they had faced everything else. Because that's what siblings do. They protect each other, even when the rest of the world fails them. They become each other's light in the darkness, each other's strength in weakness, each other's voice when fear steals their words. And sometimes, in the darkest moments, they become each other's heroes. The morning after Greg's arrest, Malik and Tiana sat at the kitchen table across from their mother. Keisha hadn't slept. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, and her nurse's scrubs from the night before were wrinkled from hours of crying. I need to understand, Keisha whispered, staring at Malik's notebook lying open between them. How did I not see this? You didn't want to see it. Tiana's voice was hoarse from crying. I told you, Mom. I tried to tell you what he was doing. Baby, I dashed. No, Malik interrupted, his small hand finding Tiana's under the table. Let her finish. Tiana squeezed his hand and continued, stronger now. You would wait until you weren't looking. Stand too close. Touch my hair, my shoulders. Call me princess in this voice that made me feel sick. And when I told you, you said I was jealous. Keisha flinched at the words. I convinced myself you were just having trouble adjusting. He threatened me. Tiana's voice cracked. Said if I told anyone, he'd make sure you never believed me. And he was right. You didn't. The signs were everywhere, Mom, Malik added quietly. He flipped through pages of his notebook. April 15th. Greg cornered Tiana in the kitchen while you were in the shower. April 18th. He stood in her doorway for 10 minutes, just watching her. April 20th. He threatened to make her quit dance class. Each entry seemed to hit Keisha like a physical blow. I was so desperate to believe he was perfect, she whispered. After your father left, I wanted someone to make everything better. But he made everything worse. Tiana burst out. And you let him hurt me. The police detective said there were other girls, Malik said, his young voice steady despite the horror of the words. Greg had done this before. That's why they arrested him so fast. They'd been looking for him. Keisha pressed her hands to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Oh God, what have I done? My babies, I'm so sorry. I'm your mother. I was supposed to protect you, but you didn't, Tiana said softly. Malik did. Detective Rivera, the female officer from the night before, arrived then to take their official statements. She sat with each of them separately, recording their accounts. When she got to Malik's notebook, she handled it with reverence. This is extraordinary, she told him. You may have saved not just your sister, but other girls too. Your detailed records will help us build a strong case against Greg. Will he go to jail? Malik asked. With this evidence and his prior history? Yes, he will. Later that afternoon, their father James arrived. He'd spent the night in their guest room, unwilling to leave his children after everything that had happened. Now he stood in the living room, facing Keisha. "The kids want to come live with me," he said firmly. "No," Keisha breathed. "Please no. They're all I have." "You lost the right to protest when you chose that monster over our daughter's safety." James's voice was hard. "They don't feel safe here anymore, Keisha. Can you blame them?" Keisha looked at her children, huddled together on the couch. They seemed so small, yet somehow older than they had just days ago. "Please," she begged, "give me another chance. I'll do better, I promise. We can get counseling, work through this." "Mom," Malik spoke up, his voice gentle but firm. "We need time and space." And he glanced at Tiana, who nodded slightly. "And we feel safer with Dad right now. But I'm your mother." Keisha's voice rose desperately. "Everything I did, even if it was wrong, was because I loved you. I wanted to give you a complete family again." "We were a complete family," Tiana said quietly. "Before Greg, just the three of us. We were enough. But you couldn't see that." Keisha sank to her knees, reaching for her children. This time, they didn't pull away, but they didn't move toward her either. "What can I do?" she whispered. "Tell me how to fix this." "You can't fix it," Malik said. "Not right now. But maybe with time, we'll still see you," Tiana added softly. "We just need to feel safe again, to trust again." James stepped forward. "I've already enrolled them in schools near my house. They'll start next week. And I found a therapist who specializes in childhood trauma." Keisha nodded numbly, watching as her children went upstairs to pack their things. Everything was happening so fast, yet she knew she had no right to slow it down. She had lost that right the moment she chose not to believe her daughter. An hour later, bags were packed and loaded into James's car. Keisha stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching her children prepare to leave. "We'll call you," Malik promised, giving her a quick hug. "And maybe we can have dinner sometimes?" Tiana hesitated, then stepped forward to hug her mother too. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "But I need to love myself more right now." As James's car pulled away, Keisha remained on the porch, watching until it disappeared around the corner. The house behind her felt impossibly empty, filled with the echoes of all the warnings she had ignored, all the signs she had dismissed. In the car, Malik and Tiana sat close together in the back seat, holding hands like they had done so often lately. Through the rear window, they could see their mother growing smaller in the distance. "Are we doing the right thing?" Tiana whispered. Malik squeezed her hand. "We're doing the necessary thing. Sometimes they're the same." James glanced at his children in the rearview mirror, his heart swelling with pride and aching with sorrow. His son, so young yet so wise. His daughter, so wounded yet so strong. They would heal, he promised himself. It would take time, but they would heal. As they drove toward their new beginning, the siblings leaned against each other, drawing strength from their unshakable bond. They had survived the darkness together. Now it was time to step into the light, even if that meant leaving some things and some people behind. Sometimes the hardest endings led to the best beginnings. And sometimes the deepest love meant knowing when to walk away, carrying hope for a future where trust could be rebuilt, one small step at a time. 3 months after moving in with their father, Malik and Tiana were beginning to feel at home in their new rooms. James had let them decorate however they wanted. Malik's walls were covered with superhero posters, while Tiana had chosen soft purple paint and fairy lights. "You've got this," Malik said one morning, walking with Tiana to her first session with Dr. Carter, their therapist. "Want me to wait outside?" Tiana squeezed his hand. "No, you should go to your own session with Dr. Martinez." "I'll be okay." Their father had found them separate therapists in the same practice, Dr. Carter for Tiana and Dr. Martinez for Malik. James believed they each needed their own space to process what had happened. "Remember," Dr. Martinez told Malik during a session, "what you did was incredibly brave, but you're allowed to feel scared or angry too. You don't always have to be the strong one." Malik nodded, fiddling with the stress ball Dr. Martinez had given him. "Sometimes I still feel guilty," he admitted. "Like maybe if I'd done something sooner." "You did everything right," Dr. Martinez assured him. You protected your sister the best way you knew how, and when the time came, you took action. That's all anyone could ask of you, especially at your age. Meanwhile, in Dr. Carter's office, Tiana was making progress too. I had a good day yesterday, she said softly. I actually laughed at lunch with my new friends. Like, really laughed. And I didn't feel guilty about it afterward. Dr. Carter smiled warmly. That's wonderful, Tiana. Healing isn't just about processing the bad times. It's about allowing yourself to embrace the good ones too. At home, James created a routine that made them feel secure. Family dinners every night, movie marathons on weekends, and always an open door if they needed to talk. He'd even started taking cooking classes so he could make their favorite meals. Dad's lasagna isn't as good as Mom's, Malik whispered to Tiana one night, but I like that he tries. Tiana nodded, watching their father proudly serve his slightly overcooked pasta. It tastes like love, she whispered back, and they shared a smile. Their mother was trying too, in her own way. She'd started therapy sessions with Dr. Ross, trying to understand how she'd become so blind to her children's pain. I was so afraid of being alone, she told Dr. Ross, that I made my children feel alone instead. How do I fix that? It's not about fixing, Dr. Ross explained. It's about rebuilding. Trust is earned through consistent actions over time. Keisha took those words to heart. She never pressured her children to visit, but she sent them cards every week, telling them she loved them and was proud of them. She attended their school events, sitting quietly in the back, giving them space while showing her support. Slowly, life began to feel normal again. Tiana returned to dance class, though at a new studio closer to their father's house. Her new partner, David, was patient and respectful, never making her feel uncomfortable. One day, during a group therapy session for teens, Tiana raised her hand. I want to share my story, she said. Maybe it can help someone else. The group leader nodded encouragingly, and Tiana spoke about everything. The grooming, the fear, the betrayal, and most importantly, the healing. When she finished, another girl raised her hand. Thank you, she said quietly. I think I need to talk to someone about my stepdad. That night, Tiana told Malik about it. You didn't just save me, she said. By being brave, you helped me be brave too. And now maybe we can help others. Malik's story spread too, in its own way. His teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, asked him to speak to the class about trust and courage. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting bad guys, he told his classmates. Sometimes it's telling the truth when nobody wants to hear it. 6 months after moving out, they agreed to have dinner with their mother. James drove them to the restaurant, waiting in the car to give them privacy, but staying close enough if they needed him. Keisha was already seated, nervously arranging her napkin. When she saw them, her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back, remembering what she'd learned in therapy about respecting their boundaries. Thank you for coming, she said simply. The dinner was awkward at first, but gradually grew more comfortable. They talked about school, about their new friends, about their therapy sessions. Keisha listened more than she spoke, really listened, like she hadn't done in so long. Greg's trial is next month, she said finally. The prosecutor says with Malik's notebook and the other victims coming forward, he'll be in prison for a long time. Tiana tensed slightly, but Malik took her hand under the table. Their signal that they were in this together. We don't have to talk about him, Keisha added quickly. I just wanted you to know that you're safe. You'll always be safe now. I promise. We know, Mom, Malik said gently. We're getting stronger every day. As spring turned to summer, the siblings found their rhythm in their new life. They still had bad days. Tiana still sometimes woke from nightmares, and Malik occasionally felt the weight of responsibility too heavily. But they had tools now to handle those moments. They had their weekly therapy sessions, their supportive father, their slowly healing relationship with their mother, and most importantly, they had each other. One evening, as they sat on the back porch of their father's house watching the sunset, Tiana turned to Malik. Remember our old signal? She asked. The knot code? Malik nodded. 3 quick, 2 slow. I haven't needed it in months, she said thoughtfully. But I still feel safer knowing we have it. Like our own secret superpower. We can make a new one, Malik suggested. Not for danger, for good things. Like when we're happy but don't have the words to say it. Tiana smiled, a real, bright smile that reached her eyes. She tapped the porch railing. 2 quick knocks, 1 slow, 2 quick. What's that mean? Malik asked. It means thank you for being my brother, she said. And I love you, and we're going to be okay. Malik repeated the pattern. 2 quick, 1 slow, 2 quick. They sat together, watching the sky turn purple and orange, their new signal of hope echoing in the quiet evening air. Life wasn't perfect. They still had healing to do, trust to rebuild, scars that would take time to fade. But they had something many people never find, the unshakable knowledge that they would always have each other's backs, no matter what. That night, as James called them in for dinner, both siblings paused in the doorway, looking back at the sunset. The future stretched out before them, not dark and frightening like it had seemed months ago, but full of possibility. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger. They had learned that sometimes the biggest heroes come in the smallest packages, and that love, real love, means protecting each other, believing each other, and standing together against anyone who would try to hurt them. Most importantly, they had learned that healing isn't just about getting back to who you were before the pain. Sometimes it's about becoming someone stronger, someone braver, someone who knows their own worth and won't let anyone take it away again. 2 quick knocks, 1 slow, 2 quick. We're going to be okay. Through courage and determination, Malik protected his sister when no one else would, and together, they found the strength to begin healing. Stories like this remind us of the resilience within us all. What would you do if someone you loved was in trouble, but no one believed them? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more powerful stories of hope and bravery.